Hi there, I'm Amanda Castor with Material Girl Quilts. Today I'm here to share with you a new tutorial for the Hexaround Quilt. This quilt is made using pre-cut 2.5-inch strips or jelly rolls, and it comes together quickly and is suitable for both beginners, intermediate, or even advanced quilters. The finished size of this quilt is 60 inches by 64, which is a great throw size. So let's get started. Okay, the first thing we need to do is select 72 of the pre-cut 2.5-inch strips and separate those into pairs. So you will have 36 pairs that you will mix and match so that your prints and your colors are evenly distributed throughout. And you will sew those into strip sets as I've done here. You'll sew along the full length, and then I just pressed towards the dark fabric for each of these. So again, you will select 72 strips and then sew those into 36 strip sets. And then what we're going to do is cut these into triangles. And so the tool that I'm using for this is the Creative Grid 60-degree triangle ruler. Now, there are other brands that sell a 60-degree ruler that if you have one that you prefer, you can certainly use that. This is the one that I prefer, and I will include a link to this in the video description. But it is perfect for this quilt and cutting these triangles and making it easy to piece these half hexagons together. So what we will do is, you'll notice at the top of this ruler, it's a flat, straight edge. So you will lay that at the top of your sewn strip set so that it lines up, and then at the bottom of the strip set should line up at the 4.5-inch mark on your ruler. And I often like to check at the center line here where you have your seam, and that is at 2.25 inches. So the first thing you'll do then is cut off this selvage edge, the extra. And then you will cut your first triangle. So here is our first triangle. Now the next step we'll do is we will rotate the ruler 180 degrees, and we will cut again in the opposite direction. And here's our second triangle. Now, as you'll see, once these are cut, the fabrics are then placed in two different locations depending on which direction you cut your triangle. You will continue cutting along the strip set to cut a total of 12 triangles, 6 of each colorway. Okay, now that all of these are cut, we're going to lay these out into half hexagons. As you'll see here, we take 3 of each. Oh, I need to cut one. Oh, there it is. 3 of each of these to create your half hexagons. Now we're going to sew these triangles together. Again, using a 1/4-inch seam. And typically for these, what I do is I press away from the center triangle. You want to make sure you press that open. So as you can see, I've pressed away from that center triangle, and now we sew the final triangle onto this half hexagon. And again, we press out away from the center triangle. And once you do that, then your half hexagon is created and you have a nice straight flat edge on the bottom of your half hexagon. So for each of these strip sets, you will create a total of 2 matching half hexagons for each of the different color placements from your strip set. And next I will show you how we lay these out for the quilt top. Okay, now that all of your half hexagons are sewn, we're going to lay them out into 16 total rows of 9 half hexagons each. So I have a few of them set out in a row here just to give an example. So we'll imagine that this top row is going to be the top row of the quilt. So we have the top, we will start at, on the top left hand side of the quilt will be the top of a half hexagon, and the second row will then include the bottom of the matching set for that half hexagon. Then your next half hexagon will actually just be the bottom, and it will be, if you can imagine, that this is the top of the quilt, so it will be the very top row, and then the other half of this hexagon will then be placed in the bottom row of your quilt. So again, then next you will rotate your half hexagon so it completes another hexagon here, and then you have your half hexagons, and this hexagon here will be matched up on this side with the bottom half for the next row. And when we sew our half hexagons together to complete the row, I'm going to show you a trick that will help you to make these lay straight. So these are the first 2 half hexagons for our first row. So what we're going to do is lay them right sides together, and what you need to do is shift the triangles off essentially a 1/4 of an inch. So I will show you here that this is, the tip of this triangle is off of the edge of this other half hexagon by 1/4 of an inch, and you can see at the other end then the other tip of that half hexagon is poking out from the bottom of that. So you will shift it up essentially a 1/4 of an inch before you sew them together. And once we do that, and press, that will result in a perfectly straight row. So you can see these are now lined up perfectly straight since we adjusted by a 1/4 of an inch from our triangles when we pieced them together. So again, you'll just repeat this, sewing all of your half hexagons together into rows, and then sew your rows together to complete your quilt top. Now I also wanted to mention that as you sew your rows together, it's best to press the seams for your rows in alternating directions. So your first row you can press towards the right, your second row press towards the left, third to the right, and back and forth and so on. That way, when you sew your rows together, your seams between your hexagons will nest, and it will then all of your points should match up very, very well when you do that. So after all of your rows are sewn together, and I have just 4 of my rows sewn together here just to show you as an example, but you'll see on the end you have the edges of your hexagons. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut those off to make them straight. If you'd like to leave them, you can. It would be a fun accent to your quilt. You would just have to go in and out when you do the binding, but I'm going to cut this off so that it's a straight edge. But I just wanted to show you what you'll need to do when we go to do that. So you'll lay your quilt top on your cutting mat and take your ruler, and you will make sure that you leave at least a 1/4 of an inch beyond the points of the interior of your outside hexagons here. So I'm not going to cut because I don't have my entire quilt top completed yet, but you'll line your ruler up so that, and take a note of the 1/4 inch mark on your ruler, and make sure that you leave at least a 1/4 of an inch beyond the points of these inside hexagons, and then you will trim off the extra there, and that will give you a straight edge for the sides of your quilt. I just love how this quilt turned out, and I think it would look great in any fabric collection or even just scraps from your bins. In fact, I think if you chose 2 different fabric collections or 2 different jelly rolls from your favorite designer, it would look beautiful. Now, on a side note, I'd like to point out my quilty themed shirt. It says scrappy, which represents one of my favorite styles of quilts and also my attitude. Now, I designed this shirt, and you can purchase one for yourself in my shop. I also have other t-shirts or sweatshirt options in different designs, and there's more to come. So if there are any quilty themed shirts or designs you would like to see available, please let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please click the like button and subscribe to make sure you don't miss any tutorials going forward. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.